It's a great privilege to be here to introduce one of our great Americans. He is a man who has achieved, through his integrity, through his ability, through his vision, through his sense of public service. He's had a very distinguished public career. In one sense, you might say that he came by it through inheritance, because both on his paternal and maternal side, distinguished public servants are in his ancestry. But what he has done through his own unaided effort. He had a wonderful war record. He was in charge of a PT boat in the Solomons. And when that boat was cut in half by a Japanese destroyer, and practically all of them might have perished, he personally, individually, rescued these men from the waters, the shark-infested waters, swimming with them for miles, towing them severally, and then preserving their lives for 10 days behind the Japanese lines. A crew was declared to be lost and missing, yet he brought them back safely and received the highest kind of citation for that purpose from the Navy, suffering severe injuries which subsequently handicapped him through many years, and from which he perhaps has not completely recovered. In the Congress, he was first elected in 1946, was re-elected 4 or 5 times, and in 1952 was elected to the United States Senate, where in one term he has demonstrated a leadership which does not come to many senators in a whole lifetime of service in that distinguished body, a body of great men in which to be preeminent shows real merit and real distinction. Jack Kennedy is a member of a number of very important committees. He is a member of the Committee on Labor and Welfare. He has many achievements in that field to his credit. He was the first to introduce a bill to raise the minimum wage to $1 when it was very much lower, and it became law. If I were to list his achievements, I would be making the speech of the evening. There wouldn't be any time left for him. He is a member of the important Committee on Foreign Relations, and in that field, as relatively a junior senator, he has already showed marked leadership. And that is the striking thing about Jack Kennedy's legislative career. It is generally assumed that in the legislature, in a legislative body, there is no opportunity for leadership. The majority leader leads. It is only in the executive positions that it is deemed that men can show leadership. But Jack Kennedy has shown a leadership which has already earned him not only the great respect and admiration of his able colleagues, but of the entire nation. Leadership is what a democracy needs in order to function. One of the first lessons that we learn is that the democratic process does not function by itself. It requires leadership. One of the things this nation of ours has sadly lacked in the last 6 years. If Jack Kennedy continues in the Senate or wherever else he goes, he will exhibit the kind of leadership which this nation needs in this crucial hour in world affairs. It gives me unusual pleasure to introduce my friend, that able and distinguished statesman, John Fitzgerald Kennedy of Massachusetts.
Governor Gruening, Bob Bartlett, Bill Egan, Hugh Wade, Mr. Lee, Mr. Reed, Mr. Bradshaw, Mrs. Wynne, and Mr. Gray, distinguished guests, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very grateful for that very generous introduction from your able and distinguished governor. The United States Senators use the word able and distinguished with great abandon. In fact, in 1951, while Vice President Barclay was presiding over the Senate, he began to count the number of times that senators referred to each other as able and distinguished, and after reaching by 8 o'clock that night the figure of some 300 times, he suggested that a Senate resolution be passed that from that time forward, all members of the Senate would be considered able and distinguished, and the Senate could go on about the people's business. Well, it needs no Senate resolution to testify to the degree of ability and distinction of Governor Gruening. And I'm most honored by his generous introduction, and I'm most pleased to be here. I came to Alaska to pay a debt of gratitude. If I had been successful in receiving all the votes of the Alaska delegation at the last Democratic Convention, I might have been nominated for Vice President of the United States, and my political career would now be over. So I've come here to express my thanks for your not supporting me. I am one of a series of visiting politicians who are disturbing the peace in Alaska during the last 2 months. The magnetic effect of Alaska. You've been able to move the Department of Interior here and cause the Secretary of Interior to spend more time here in the last month than he has in any time in which he or any other Republican Interior Secretary has found it possible to spend in the last 6 years. The Vice President of the United States was here, and he stated that he noticed in the last 3 weeks of the campaign a change coming all over the country, which was also taking place in Alaska, and he proved that he was right. And we are confident that his judgment is going to be certified in this coming election here in Alaska. He waged an all-out campaign in California, and of course Knight is out now, and Nolan, and I think that he may well be out in the next 2 years. I think that it's quite obvious that Massachusetts and Alaska are a long way from each other. Much is different. We fish the cold Atlantic, and you fish the smoky Pacific, and we live in a crowded area, and you have great spaces in between, and we're really the oldest section of the United States, and you're the youngest. But I think that however great may be our differences, there's a good deal that's also the same. I think there's the same quality of the people, the same hope in the future, the same determination to build a secure life for themselves in their respective states, the same confidence in the future of this country, the same realization that only the Democratic Party offers a solid hope for the future. And what Massachusetts did on November 4th, I'm confident that Alaska, the youngest state in the Union, will do at the end of this month. I'm especially glad to be here with Bob Bartlett, with whom I served in the Congress for 6 years. I always thought that being a member of the Congress was probably the most difficult of all political tasks. There's a famous letter written back in the 1934 by a distinguished congressman from California, Congressman John Stephen McGroarty. He kept getting letters from his constituents after being sent to Congress, and he finally sat down and he wrote a celebrated letter which said that one of the countless drawbacks of being in Congress is that I am compelled to receive an impertinent letter from a jackass like you in which you say that I promised to have the Sierra Madre Mountains reforested, and I've been in Congress for 2 months and haven't done so. So you kindly take 2 running jumps, and so on. Well, I don't think that Bob Bartlett ever wrote that kind of letter, and he didn't have to. And I think that the reputation and esteem with which all of us held him in Washington is more than adequately reflected here in his native state of Alaska. And I'm confident that he's going to be elected a United States Senator from this state and have the same influence in the United States Senate as he did so many years in the House of Representatives. And I'm confident that you're going to send Governor Gruening to serve Alaska with him. I've known the governor for a good many years. His son was in my brother's class in college, and I was there at the same time. And I know all the things that he has meant to Alaska and Alaska have meant to him. I know that when the Vice President got off the plane, he said, my knowledge of Alaska has come through your book. My knowledge of Alaska has come not only through his book, but also from hearing him myself. And those of us who came from eastern states, from urban states, who who stood up and voted for Alaska, and my colleague did not, and many New England senators did not, did so in part because of our confidence in him and because of our feeling that if he speaks for Alaska, then Alaska is going to be a great state. So that I'm confident that when the people of Alaska elect Bob Bartlett senator, they're going to elect Ernest Gruening senator. Because I think a strong combination of senators can do a good deal for this state. Massachusetts is filled with Egan's. He could run very strong in Massachusetts if he chose to do so, but I'm confident that he's going to do so here in Alaska, and that you're going to make him a great governor. And it is a fact, though senators sometimes forget it, that members of the House of Representatives have the power to initiate all appropriations and have the power to tax the people, which is the most basic power of any legislative body. So that you have to elect a congressman, and I know that you're going to send Congressman Rivers down here to speak for Alaska in that all-important body of the House of Representatives. And I know that these temporarily mute candidates who are with me tonight are all going to receive your ringing endorsement. And I want to be sure that even though they've been kind enough to yield to a visitor, I know that you're going to give them your wholehearted support. Alaska, like no other state in the Union, has the advantage of both time and space in viewing the 1958 congressional elections in perspective. You are already reading the analysis of why the Democrats swept the country. You will hear some say that this was a strange campaign, that there are no longer any real issues between the two parties, that the election was decided pretty much on the basis of personalities and public relations rather than on issues. Now, it is true that the Republican Party found itself completely out of issues in this campaign. Heretofore, the Republicans have tried to make an issue out of corruption in government, but no longer does Mr. Nixon defy us to name him one case of Republican corruption, and no longer does Mr. Eisenhower promise prompt action on any wrongdoers in his official family. The best they can say now is that the Democratic administration fired the wrongdoers and prosecuted them, while the Republicans merely regarded them as imprudent. A Republican chairman during the last weeks of the campaign, when the Vice President of the United States was bitterly attacking the Democrats, told me that the President may have been imprudent, but the Vice President of the United States needed him, so that they felt that he was going to stay on. Heretofore, the Republicans have assailed the Democrats as the protectors of unscrupulous labor bosses, but when the votes were counted in the House of Representatives on the Kennedy Ives labor reform bill, which came out of our House committee by a vote, the Senate committee by a vote of 12-1, and passed the Senate floor by a vote of 88-1, and came to a vote in the House of Representatives during the last week of the session, it was defeated in the House of Representatives by a vote of 198 to 190. And two-thirds of the Democrats supported it, while three-fourths of the Republicans voted against it. I would not claim that Jimmy Hoffa was an influential member of the House of Representatives on the Republican side, or that he dominated the Republican members of the House. But only Jimmy Hoffa and his associates are benefiting by the defeat of this bill. The conflict of interest transactions, the sweetheart contracts, the manipulation of union funds, all of the sorry tales which we have heard as a member of the McClellan Committee during the last 2 years will be continued, because the Republican Party and Secretary of Labor Mitchell refused to recognize that this was our best opportunity to rid the labor movement of the racketeers who have nothing in common with the honest labor union people of this country. And instead they permitted the concentration of effort by the Republican leadership on right-to-work bills, which are not intended to liquidate racketeers, but are intended to weaken the union movement at a crucial time in the history of this country. Now, I think that those of us who are concerned about this problem recognize that this is going to be in the forefront of the issues in January. I think the position of the Democratic Party is clear. The position of the Republican Party is not clear, and I think it's an extra reason to send Democrats to the House and Senate to support this most vital effort. 2 months ago in August, we had a racketeer before our committee who took not only the Fifth Amendment, but the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and the 16th Amendment, and deeply regretted the repeal of the 18th Amendment. Heretofore, the Republicans have insisted that they were the party of sound money and balanced budget, but the record of the present administration, the President made a statement the other day saying that big spenders had been elected to Congress. If that were really the platform on which we had run, this would have been an overwhelming Republican victory. For the fact of the matter is that they are the biggest peacetime spenders in history. $80 billion this year, even though in 1952 the President ran on a program calling for a $60 billion limitation on expenditures. With a $12 billion deficit coming up, two-thirds of which is due to a drop in tax revenues due to a depression which was permitted to run certainly 5 or 6 months longer than it needed to run. The Republicans could not talk about prosperity with more than 4 million people unemployed, with millions of others still working on a short-time week, and the number of business failures still rising. In short, if these pundits who say that there are no longer any campaign issues mean that there was a lack of Republican issues, that the old GOP slogans of peace, prosperity, and progress had lost their meaning, they were correct. But this is not to say that there are no longer any burning issues in this country. The fact of the matter is that our agenda today is, if anything, longer than it was in the 30s. We have not yet met the needs of more than 7 million families living in the richest country on earth who are obliged to support their families on an income of less than $2,000 a year. The 4 million people who are unemployed in this country, who receive a weekly unemployment compensation check on the average in this country of less than $31 a week. Of the 8 million people in this country who are entitled to be under the coverage of the minimum wage law, but due to exemptions which have been passed are denied its coverage, most of them women who are obliged to work for less than $1 an hour on a 40-hour week. Or 17 million Americans here in the richest country on earth who live in substandard housing. So when they talk about a lack of issues, they fail to realize that our opportunity to do constructive things for the benefit of this country and the free world has never been brighter. And I think it's because the Democratic Party recognized this. I think that's why they received an overwhelming mandate from the people of this country last November 4th. We have entered this campaign of 1958 seeking an opportunity to do the great job that still needs to be done. And that job needs to be done here in Alaska, our newest state, perhaps more than in any other state of the United States. You need schools and hospitals and urban projects and power dams and regulation of fisheries and all of the things which are going to be vitally needed if Alaska is going to realize its great promise. You need airports and highways and transportation systems, and all of these things are on the agenda of the Democratic Congress. You need, in particular, the rapid development of your hydroelectric power potential, without which this state cannot possibly go ahead and bring new industries into it. And I think particularly here in this city, in talking to Governor Gruening from the airport today, he pointed out how important it could be if we could get a satisfactory power project in this part of Alaska. It would mean the attraction of pulp industries and other industries which are going to be the basis of the growth of this state. In short, our party and citizens in Alaska and in Massachusetts and all over this country have a long agenda. And in seeking to fulfill our responsibilities, we do not lack the support of the people in all the 49 states. I would not attempt to tell the voters of another state their business, but it seems to me that the voters of this state, particularly the state of Alaska, regardless of party, would see the wisdom of electing Democrats to state and national office. The reason is simple: to share in the great Democratic sweep of 1958. For the votes have been counted. The returns are in. You already know that this is the greatest Democratic year since 1936. The United States Senate will be overwhelmingly Democratic in 1959. The House of Representatives also will be overwhelmingly Democratic. The congressional policies that will shape the future of this state will be written largely in the councils of the Democratic Party. Washington is a long way from here, and I can vouch for that, having left there at 7:30 last night. And because it is such a great distance, you want people there who are able to speak with a special vigor. I know nothing about the problems of Alaska, but Ernest Gruening and Bob Bartlett do. And when they speak with a united voice rather than a split voice, then you know that your needs are going to be recognized. Now, you don't... Of what possible benefit can it be to the state of Alaska to send a senator to join the dwindling ranks of the minority party, to send a man who will serve at the bottom rung of the least important committee on the Republican side of the United States Senate? Now, what possible reason would any citizen of this great state who's anxious to see Alaska move ahead send a senator down there who will be made a member of the Committee on Civil Service and the Committee on Rules, along with Senator Javits, the senator from the largest state in the United States and the richest, who has faithfully toiled on the minority end of those two committees during the last 2 years? And what possible use is it to send a split delegation, one Democrat and one Republican, who are going to vote in different ways? They might just as well pair at the beginning of the session and stay home, because their voices will be canceled out. And the Democrats who are going to be writing the policies which are going to make the difference are going to regard the Alaska delegation as ineffectual, because it does not speak with vigor and vitality and unity. So I think that you've been given a great opportunity in having seen which way the country went. And while I know that everyone here, regardless of what happened November 4th, would have voted Democratic, there are people in this state who might not have. But they've been shown the light. They've been given an opportunity to associate themselves with this great victory. And I know that if you tell them what's going to happen to a Republican senator, and I wouldn't want that to happen to any citizen of this state, I think that they're going to go down there and send a Democrat. I want to also emphasize that a few votes really can make a difference. 6 more Democrats in the House of Representatives would have passed the housing bill in the last session, upon which all of us are so dependent: housing for the elderly, for the middle income, and urban renewal for our older cities. 3 more Democrats in the Senate would have passed the President's Scholarship Program. 25,000 boys and girls who are talented and needy are going to be denied the opportunity to go to college in next September, which would have their opportunity, which would have been theirs if this program had passed, simply because we didn't have 3 more Democrats in the United States Senate. 3 more Democrats in the House of Representatives would have secured passage in that body of a bill to finance the construction of schools, which certainly should be a priority. And only 1 more Democrat in the Senate would have meant passage of an amendment to increase federal grants to the needy and disabled. Of one thing I'm certain: we're going to have those votes next year. But I think even more important than numbers is the talent and quality and potential for leadership. Now, when you send 2 able and respected senators from this state of Alaska to Washington, senators who are well known in Washington and who are going to be there for a number of years, I think that their opportunity for influence is great, not only just to help Alaska, but to help the United States. And I think it's important from the point of view of Massachusetts that we have the ablest talent from all states. And I think, as I say, I was in Amesbury, Massachusetts, the other day, and I met the oldest citizen of Amesbury. He's 101 years of age. He was 21 years of age when General Custer was slain. We are old in Massachusetts, and we are vitally concerned with what happens in other parts of the country, that we get the best possible leadership that we can get in every state to help us meet our problems in Massachusetts, to help us meet our national and international responsibilities. And that's why we have a vested interest, and that's why I don't feel completely as an outsider in coming to Alaska and asking you to send 2 senators down here of the same party that I'm a member of, because this is part of the United States. And we're not coming into foreign country today when those of us who come from Massachusetts come here. We have an interest in what you do, just as you do have an interest in what we do. And the best people that you can get mean the best that we can get, so that this is a common enterprise and one in which we all share. So I want to express the pleasure that I have had in coming here for 1 day. It's a source of satisfaction to me that a predecessor of mine on the Foreign Relations Committee, a chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Sumner of Massachusetts, made the decisive speech which endorsed the action of Secretary Seward nearly a century ago when Alaska was purchased from Russia. And I think, as a senator from Massachusetts, it was a source of satisfaction to me to stand up in the Senate and vote aye when the question came for Alaska admission into the Union. And I think that those of us who have come here today from Massachusetts recognize that the potential growth of this area, that this is a great national asset. And one of the wisest things that the 85th Congress did was to admit this state into the Union. And the fact that I was reelected to the United States Senate after doing so, I don't pretend to say that the future is always going to be easy under a Democratic administration. But I do believe that only the Democratic Party has the enthusiasm and the vitality and the determination
and the new ideas necessary to meet the problems that we face. We can build the homes and the schools and the dams and the hospitals that our nation needs. And we can wage unrelenting war against drought and poverty and illness and illiteracy and economic insecurity. And we can build through strength and justice and realistic leadership a lasting peace. The hard, tough question is whether a free society, a society such as ours, with its breadth of opportunity, its range of alternatives, its freedom of choice, can really survive during the next decades. When we and the Russians have the power to destroy 1/4 of the Earth's population, a feat not accomplished since Cain slew Abel. We are moving through an age where we will witness not only new breakthroughs in weapons of destruction, but also a race for mastery of the sky and the rain, the ocean and the tides, the inside of the earth and the inside of men's minds. In short, we need leadership better equipped than any since Lincoln's day to make clear to our people the vast spectrum of our challenges. In the words of Woodrow Wilson, we must neither run with the crowd nor deride it, but seek sober counsel for it and for ourselves. In 1789 in Hartford, Connecticut, the skies at noon turned from blue to gray, and by mid-afternoon the city had darkened over so densely that in that religious age men fell on their knees and begged a final blessing before the end came. The Connecticut House of Representatives was in session, and many of the members clamored for an immediate adjournment. And the Speaker of the House, one Colonel Davenport, came to his feet, and he silenced the din with these words: "The day of judgment is either approaching or it is not. If it is not, there is no cause for adjournment. If it is, I choose to be found doing my duty. I wish, therefore, that candles may be brought." I hope that all of us, whether in Massachusetts or Alaska, in the next few months and years, will help bring candles to illuminate our state and country's way. Thank you very much.